Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors, members only Q&A for February 2016. Can you believe it's like March next week? It's scary. I'm Joanna Penn here with Orna Ross. Hi, Orna.
Hi, Joanna, and hello, everyone. Yeah, wow. Where did the first 1/6 of the year, publishing year, already gone?
Oh, dear. That's it, so I hope everyone's achieved all their goals already. So as ever, we start the show by giving a bit of an update as to where we are to prove that we do create. We don't just talk about creating. So Orna, I know you've been in San Francisco and you also launched a Writes book. Tell us about that first.
Yeah, the San Francisco Writers Conference, which is one of the oldest writer conferences in the US. I mean, only America does writing conferences in quite that way, the size and the scale and the super organization, and everybody kind of knows what to expect. So 500 authors, lots of first time or, people with one book, people at that stage, and then some more people a little bit further on. An absolutely wonderful self-publishing track organised by ALLi Member, and a wonderful all-round person, Carla King, and she really did a fantastic job. So there were super interesting panels, and a number of our advisors there as well. It's great to catch up with them, Joel Friedlander and Helen Sedgwick, with whom, of course, I wrote the Writes book that we were launching there. So that was fantastic because Helen and I had done a collaboration on the book, but actually never met in person. So it's always kind of really strange when you have that very close working relationship. You get to know somebody so well when you're writing a book with them, but you've never actually met them in person. So it was really, really great to catch up with her. So yeah, we talked about rights quite a bit at the conference. I did a session on it with an agent, and we actually got a scout. We found a scout. They hide normally, and so we had a really interesting panel on selling rights from the agent's perspective, the scout's perspective, and Little Pickle Press, which is very interesting, run by a very interesting indie author, Raina, whose second name now escapes me, but she's Little Pickle Press, well worth looking at, a children's book imprint. Raina self-published her own and then went on, as lots of indies are now doing, to publish other authors really successfully, and has been fantastically successful in selling rights. So we had a really good discussion with a really interested kind of core group about that, and very much firming up this sense I have that rights are like the final missing piece of the jigsaw. I mean, I don't think, as we've said every time when we discuss rights, it's something that you need to think about at the beginning. So any of you who are kind of just starting out on your journey, you don't need to get stuck into this at this point. But I still think the mindset that stops us talking about, trade publishers picking up indie authors as if then off you go into trade published land forever, into the sunset, kind of thing. It's just not like that. And I don't think we do ourselves any favors as authors to think about it like that, and thinking about it from a rights perspective, the perspective of, this is my content. There are so many different ways I can get this to people who are interested in it, so many different ways I can monetize the rights within it. To think that way from the very beginning, even though you may not actually do that work until maybe 2 years down the road. So yeah, all around great conference.
Remind people what the book is called.
Yes, good. Thank you, Joanna. The book is called How Authors Sell Publishing Rights. It's free, of course, to members, as all our guidebooks and services are, but non-members can buy it and are buying it. And yeah, I co-written with Helen Sedgwick, as I said, who also wrote the Self-Publishers legal manual. So Helen is absolutely brilliant on contracts and, again, positioning yourself properly in relation to negotiations with agents and publishers and so on. So it's very much about selling your translation rights, your TV and movie rights, and all the various subsidiary rights that are embedded in the book. So
yeah, and I think it's important. I mean, you mentioned the San Francisco conference there and people who were just writing their first book, and there'll be people listening who have just self-published their first book, and then you're talking about the very mature side of things, selling rights, which is an advanced thing, really. People don't think about it at the beginning so much. And we were talking just before we went live about how we're constantly changing as as creatives, and how it's not like you ever arrive as such, is it? It's like things change over time, and people can see, if they're watching the video, they can see your office there. So tell us a bit about what you've changed in your creative and working environment that's making a difference for you.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, and it's something you kind of need to know, because people tend to look, once things get to a certain point or whatever, people think it's all just plain sailing and everything carries on this lovely little plateau where you're just, easily writing the books and just throwing them onto the platforms and everything is just wonderful. But it isn't, because each time you evolve and you grow and you change, even your my sense of myself and what I was doing and the balance of all the difference. I never really changed very much the kinds of structure of the projects very much, in that they're all in the same zone since I started almost, but the emphasis and the balance between them changes a lot. Also just health-wise and everything, and in terms of meeting creative intentions and producing the work. There are certain parts of it that I find easier than others, like everybody, and just over Christmas, which is always a good time for me to do an overhaul. So I moved out of sitting into standing. So I'm standing as I'm talking here at the moment, and I got a standing desk, which pitched my monitor at just the right height. My hands just kind of easily fall onto the keyboard, so ergonomically it works really well for me. And then when I was away for 2 weeks in San Francisco, I really realized how much sitting didn't suit me, and how much more tired I used to get when I was sitting than standing. So it's been a very good sort of energetic move for me. And then, yeah, I've just created space, I think, as all kind of creatives do. I have what I need. I have sort of my creative corner over there where I free write, and I have all my inspirational sort of stuff on the left, and this is kind of my hardcore working desk, and here on the red is where I line up all the various projects and make sure things are kind of going according to plan. So and I love this space. I mean, it's really important to me, and it really helps me to make things happen. I have these little egg timers and things that I think you can see one there. So one for an hour and a half. I work in 90-minute bursts. I've one for 15 minutes, for different kinds.
You're also covered in ink.
Am I? Oh God, look, I am.
If you're not watching the video, Orna has ink all over.
Burst pen.
Super creatives, covered in ink.
Like Joe in Little Women, who was my idol growing up, so that's good.
we do have Q&A coming today, but we thought we'd just have a little chat beforehand. Just for my own update, I also wanted to, last month I mentioned about Dictation, the fact that I had used Dictation for the first draft of Destroyer of Worlds, which is my next Arcane book, and I actually have here, I've now edited the first draft, and I edit by hand, and I've just typed up all the changes, and now I've got the second draft printed. And what was so amazing is that I had written some of those and I had dictated some of those, and this is kind of the final nail in the mental coffin, which says dictation won't work, is that I can't tell what I dictated and what I typed. And it, again, we were saying before the show, but it's like, if you're in a bad mood, if you don't feel like writing, but you do it anyway, you can never ever tell. You just can't tell. Your brain is still the same brain. Like, your chemical emotions don't seem to be that related to what actually comes out onto the page. So that's a kind of encouragement for me to think, even when I'm speaking and I'm saying things that I think are stupid and that the whole draft is a wreck, which of course we all think, it actually will turn out all right. So that's an encouragement for anyone else trying dictation.
Yeah, and I think the larger point is what we were trying to also say about the sort of getting your creative space around you to feed you, is that for all of us there are sort of stumbling blocks. Dictation was definitely one for you, because we were talking about that for a long time, and I'm a real believer in Dictation. I think it's great, even if you don't use it for your actual creative work. If you want to hold that sacrosanct in some way, to use it for all the other work makes total sense. But I think in terms of dictating drafts, it speeds you up. It's, and it definitely does take about 20 days or so to make a changeover of that nature. And then the exponential kind of value for that goes on forever. It's like the standing desk, or the, realizing that I work best in 90-minute bursts and then a break. I actually get, I'm more productive that way than if I work on, those kinds of things. So to learn your own, this isn't about saying, oh, look at us and what we do. It's about saying how important it is for each of us to kind of recognize what nurtures us and what's good for us. Well, not even us, what nurtures the book, what's good for the book, and then put your own, a lot of the reservations you possibly have about certain things. You shouldn't make a judgment until you've tried it. It's really important to try these things and give them a chance. They can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I've also been working on an adult colouring book with my dad, who is a fine artist. I'm exploiting my father.
Good for you. He loved every minute of it. Exploit me more.
Well, exactly. And I'm. This is, I've been into colouring books before it was trendy, so I should have jumped on this a year ago. But it's partly to do with the work my dad's doing. But I'm really, as we've talked about print before, and it's hilarious that I always say that I'm not interested in print, and now I'm actually doing print products. So there we go.
A product that cannot be done any other way.
Exactly. And this is hilarious for me. So there you go. Never say never, and also, take advantage of things. No one says that you have to only write one particular thing. You can do all kinds of different stuff. And I always said I wouldn't publish anyone else, and I am now. I'm basically co-writing or co-publishing. As I did last year with Jay Thorne. So I think, as we said last year, more and more indies are getting into these types of collaborative situations, and we can, I should just say, I have done a contract with my dad as well. I think even if it's, your life partner, you should probably still do a contract, because copyright will go potentially 70 years after you die. So you have to talk about these things. But that's what I've been up to. Before we get into question and answer.
Just before we leave that, I have to say it's a gorgeous project. Your dad's an amazing artist. It's really, really lovely. And,
it is. I'm looking forward to doing colouring and putting it on Pinterest.
Yeah.
Okay. So we also just wanted to give a shout out to the exciting developments in diversity in publishing, which I forwarded Orna I interviewed a Nigerian author on my podcast, and we were talking about writers of colour and African authors, and it was really, really fascinating. And we've had ALLi member Marisha Pink, part of a diversity in publishing and UK publishing thing. We just had there's a prize, isn't there, that's just been announced?
Yeah, for underrepresented Black, Asian and minority writers in the UK, which Dan Holloway drew our attention to today, which is good news for all.
And also, I sent Orna an article from Wired, and it's called "The Subversive Women Who Self-Publish Novels Amidst Jihadist War." And we were talking about this, going, this is, I love the fact that I'm a middle-class woman who's able to publish, but when voices that are not heard would never ever be heard. These are women, Muslim women in the north of Nigeria, who are basically self-publishing romance novels to help educate themselves and other women around things. This is kind of why indie is so awesome. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Agree. It's really moving to read that article, actually, and this is the end of self-publishing that I absolutely love, what it is facilitating there, and so many of those stories going untold, actually, the stories about the stories. It's something we must look into, all the different important things that self-publishing is facilitating that wouldn't be happening otherwise. That whole opening of freedom of expression and democratization of publishing, it's so fantastic.
Yeah, this is a movement, people. This is not. Yeah. Okay, so that's our excitement for today. Let's get on with the questions. So, Kiefer, I think it's Kiefer. I write fantasy, and I'm at a loss as to how to show characters using mind speech, as in, I presume, what they're thinking. Nowhere can I find information on this. Is it done by underlining what it said or italics?
Well, the normal convention actually is it's done by the writing. So you make it clear that you've moved into character thought. So it's not normally, years ago, the convention around this was that it was actually treated as speech, but I'm talking about, you know, in novels of the 1930s and 20s, you'll see it treated that way. And like, not consistently, it varied. And indeed, you do see sometimes people put it into italics and stuff, but
no, not anymore.
No, that can get, well, I have seen it actually in books of late, but it's, again, in indie books, but it's not a good idea at all. It's very disruptive to the reading experience. So you just treat it as normal text, as you would say, summary narrative or whatever, but you make it clear that who's thinking at the beginning of the sentence. So, and there's no need, yeah, go on.
It's a point of view exercise.
Yes.
So
exactly.
I would suggest, Kiefer, that you do some Googling around point of view, and I'm sure you've got a shelf full of writing books, as we all do. But that would be the chapters to look at. When you look at point of view and writing in a certain point of view, then you just kind of, as Orna says, you just write that way. It's not very helpful, is it?
Yeah, technically anyway, don't start underlining italics or use speech bubbles. And yeah, think of it as, yeah, I mean, that's about all we can say. And maybe come back next month and see, and let us know if, you know, if the questions are getting more specific around what you've seen. Also, do look at the books you read yourself and look at how, actually highlight how an author has done it. As somebody that you read, know and admire, look at how they handle thought in their books. And I think we learn so much from just reading the books that we like ourselves. Whenever we have a question, it's a good idea to pick up a couple of our favorite books and look and see how the author has handled the particular question that we have questions about.
Definitely. Okay. Oh, next question. Paul says, I have just released my first non-fiction ebook and I'm struggling to get reads, never mind sales and reviews. So I'm going to try and approach reviewers. It would be preferable to offer the book for free so the reviews can carry the Amazon verified purchase label, and I will make it free once I'm out of KDP Select, but this is nearly 2 months away. I'd really like to get some reviews. Any thoughts or guidance? So that will be around trying to get reviews.
Well, trying to get reviews through the use of perma-free is what it
generally
it seems to be. Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about perma-free as a strategy? Because I think he is talking about that there. He mentions wanting to be out of Select. He didn't want to, in another part of the question, I think he didn't want to.
I think the point was that, yes, it is easier to get reviews on a free book. If you look at my book Stone of Fire, compared the number of reviews, it's like 450 reviews or something on Amazon.com, and then you look at the next book in the series, which is paid, and it's like 85 or something, or 120. Like, it's at least a quarter, and that's because the first book is free. So yes, it is easier, and to get a book perma-free, you do have to be out of Select and put it on Kobo, iBooks, etc. And then they eventually will price match. There's been a few things about that in the forum in the last few weeks around the difficulty of getting things price matched. But it does seem as if you keep pushing, if you keep reporting it for free somewhere else, you can. In terms of getting reviews in general, this is tough for everyone. And at the beginning, when you don't have an email list, it is tough. And essentially, you do have to pitch bloggers if you want. You do have to try and, you know, approach readers and ask for reviews. They should be in your genre, but it is super tough. So, but I would say you're in your first month of your first book launch. And what I would say is, don't worry too much. These things happen over time, and just keep writing the next book, keep trying to build your email list. And then once you build an email list, you just ask your email list. It becomes a lot easier, but that just takes time.
Yeah, and more books probably too. There are a couple of services that offer review, you know, to get reviews for you. Please don't, in general, go for those. One that does have good results, but only for particular genres, so it would very much depend on what genre your book is in, is NetGalley. But again, it will need print copies, and, you know, that's for circulation. They will actually circulate to suitable reviewers for you. You can also get you know, an assistant maybe to approach book bloggers on your behalf. I think it's very disheartening actually on your first book, when you're trying to write your second book, to be trying to approach bloggers and reviewers. The good bloggers now have very, very long lists. There are a lot of people who review books online who won't get you any reads at all. So it's just, you know, so we would see a lot of members who, you know, go to a lot of trouble giving their books to people who review who don't really have a reader following. So you have to make sure that the people that you do submit your book to actually have readers reading their recommendations. Otherwise, you're just giving yourself a lot of work for no good reason. So, you know, there are a few authors assistants who kind of specialize in that. Kate Tilton is one, and there are others if you wanted to go down that line, but it's costly. An assistant to do that kind of work would generally cost you, you know, we're charging on an hourly rate of $20 or $25 an hour, something like that. So it's a big investment, I would say, for not the kind of return that you're looking for. So I think your idea of going perma-free is a good idea, but perma-free works best within a context of a book to follow in on, unless you're happy to just be basically being read at this point, which is it's not a bad place to start either, you know, so hopefully that's of help.
Yeah, and I think in general, as we always talk about, this is a long-term game, and there's no need to obsess in month one on book one. There'll be plenty obsessing in book 2 and book 3 and book 10 and book 17 and book 40. I mean, this is an ongoing process for every single book. And I think building that email list through a perma-free book is a good idea, so that you have something for next time. But I know, like, as remembering my first book, that's not what anyone wants to hear.
That's right. Yeah, it seems to be our job every month to say a lot of things that people don't want to hear.
I know. I'm surprised anyone listens at all. Okay. Although I must add to that, we do have feedback that people do listen and that you enjoy the show. So we're going to carry on. The next question. Owen says, this is a very short comment, so I'm fascinated. It says, the publisher wants 8 books for 10 years. Is this normal, or can I have this reduced to, say, 5 years? No other information.
I think this, Owen, we have heard from, I think Anna has been in contact with him. He's written a couple of other, if it's the same Owen, and I think it would be too much of a coincidence that it isn't. So I think the situation is that Owen has been offered a contract by a digital-only publisher, and he has no idea whether the contract's a good or a bad one. From the things he has just outlined there, it doesn't tell us, it all depends completely on what he's getting in return for what they have asked for. But I suppose the main thing to note with any conversation with any publisher, of course you can ask for 5 years, and of course you can and should ask for various other things, you know, that are really important. So how also self-publishing rights own, which you can, I think you have already downloaded as a member, has some sample contracts in the back. They don't address the specifics of the various digital publishing companies' potential contracts, because to be quite frank, they vary so much and are so different. They're practically a one-on-one kind of phenomenon. But what you will get in that book is the conditions and clauses you should be looking for. So very often with a publishing contract, it's not what's in it, or what's in it can be bad, but it's also what's not in it that you need to be aware of. So if it is the same Own, I think Anna has already asked you to send through your contract, and we'll take a look at it and see. But I don't know why, just from your comment there and from your level of concern already, I have a bad feeling about this. I have a feeling it's probably not a great deal. And it's a lot of books to ask for up front. Generally speaking, I wouldn't give anybody 8 books in a contract.
Yeah,
you give them a book and see how they get on. Do they do better than you would do with that book yourself, and go from there on a one-by-one kind of basis. And then if it's going fantastic and they're doing really well, then it's to your advantage to give them 3 books or whatever. But don't tie yourself up to always look to minimize the term, minimize the number of books you give, minimize the territory, keep it to your own country if you can. If there's a print deal involved, I think this one's digital only. So you're looking to minimize, they are looking to maximize. It's always a negotiation. You don't say, oh great, somebody wants to publish me, here, take it, that's fantastic, I can now go out and talk about my publisher. You actually get into a negotiation. It's a business deal. There are lots of tips in the book about how to do a negotiation and the things you need to think about and all of that. So take your time with it, absolutely no rush. And if you have an offer from one of these publishers, you're very likely to get an offer from another one. So don't worry about, you know, that you're losing some opportunity that will never come your way again. And also do think about doing it yourself first, because if somebody is that interested, you know, what are they bringing? That's really important. What are you actually going to get in exchange for what you're giving up?
Yeah, and the only contract I've heard of that is John Scalzi last year, who signed a 10-year, $3.4 million book deal for 13 books. So 13 books over 10 years, 3.4 million. And Scalzi wrote a lot on his blog about why he took that, because people came back at him and said, you could make more yourself, mate, because he's got a big audience. But it's actually a really good set of blog posts that he wrote, a reasoned argument of why he would do that. And also it was with a publisher, Tor, who one, have a good reputation, and two, he's been with for years. So it's like a longer term relationship type of thing.
It's a completely different thing. Plus, it's a minor matter of 3-point-something million. I presume your digital publisher is not making you that kind of offer for the 8 books.
And that's why I brought it up, because if many books and that many years, it better be something really good, because who knows what's going to happen next year, let alone in 10 years time. So these are intellectual property rights we're talking about here. This is not just a random manuscript on your desk. That's how we feel.
Yes, exactly. Don't give it away. Definitely do not give it away, and look closely at what you're getting in return.
PJ says, I'm a young adult or YA writer. Can you give me specific advice about how to market and promote for this market segment? I sell more print books at present and have made small inroads into one school. I have a Facebook page, Twitter, website, Instagram. Most of my interaction occurs on Facebook. I think marketing for YA, I've heard this from some other YA authors that print is popular. What I would do though, because neither Orna or I are YA authors, is find the top indie or not just indie, the top YA authors. I mean, I think of John Green immediately, who uses YouTube and is huge because of YouTube. I mean, I don't think, well, who knows, but some of his success pretty much comes from his millions of YouTube followers. So it's really getting on that level. Instagram, I don't use Instagram, but you know, that sounds good. People are using Snapchat, people are using, you know, things that target market are using. So I would just find the top 10, and this is valid for any author, find the top 10 best-selling authors in your subgenre and look at what they do for marketing. Obviously the indies would be preferable, because they're doing a lot of their own marketing. But equally, John Green is traditionally published, and he and his brother work damn hard at their platform. And looking at his stuff, I'm like, yep, that's why he's so successful. He works like a nutter.
Yeah, he's really good on marketing. If you also want to drop us a line, Shelley Wells is our young adult advisor, and she knows an awful lot more about that genre than either of us do, and she's really helpful, and we can put you in touch with her.
Great. Oh, James has an ISBN question. We always love.
It wouldn't be the Ask ALLi monthly call if we didn't have an ISBN question.
Gotta have one. I've heard advice that we should have separate ISBNs for POD and ebooks. One ISBN for all ebook formats and one for print on demand. The trouble is, all the hard work I'm putting into getting reviews for my book and of course sales rank won't transfer over to my print on demand when I publish. So do you want to answer that ISBN question?
Yeah, no, you won't. Sales rank won't transfer. Your POD will be treated as a different book, because in effect it is, and you know, the number of people who have read that particular edition is what will be noted or whatever. Your reviews, however, will. The way on Amazon, the way that Amazon has set it up is that the 3 formats are there, and reviews, you can, the reader coming to your page can quite easily see reviews in other countries and also reviews in other formats. So it's a simple matter of clicking from one to the other. And that's basically what we've got to work with. It's as good a system as they could possibly give us. I can't see how you would do it any other way. So what you've got to do with print is think of it. It definitely will benefit from the fact that you have a Kindle edition that has a good sales rank and reviews already. You may well find that some of the people who have already bought it in digital will buy it in print. That happens. But one way or the other, it's better off having digital first and then print, I always think. It definitely will help, but you will have to think about marketing print differently if you're serious about getting that sales rank up. But to be frank, a lot of indies just have a POD edition because some readers, a tiny minority of their readers, want to read in print and they want to make that available to them, but they don't do much with it, and that's fine.
Yeah. It's surprisingly over Christmas though. Sell a lot of print books. I always sell a lot of marketing books over Christmas.
Yeah, gifts. I mean, print is great for gifts. I know you can gift a Kindle book, but it's not the same. Yeah, you can't wrap it up, put it in a stocking or whatever. And print has lots of value. For a lot of people, there are still a lot of people who don't read digital, or sorry, don't read ebooks. Of course, POD is a digital product, really. But so I think the thing is, have it there. If you're going to focus your marketing energy and time is limited, and for which is it not, I would still focus the energy on your ebook and let the print kind of be there. And don't worry about the fact that its sales rank is different. People don't, anybody who knows or cares about sales rank knows that that's a very common thing. It's not something, it's no reflection on the book.
No. And yeah, let's face it, the print sales are pretty dominated by traditional publishing because that's where they put their energy. Ebook sales are almost completely dominated by indies. We should say that the author earnings report came out since we last spoke, and 45%, I believe now, of ebooks on Amazon.com in the period they did the survey were indie, and there was as usual a flurry of comments about how invalid the methods were, etc., etc. But even if you want to say there's like a 10% error rate, it's still pretty amazing. So yeah,
it's wonderful. And given that an ebook, your profit is so much higher. I mean, we get so hung up on print as writers and as readers, and I know why we do. I love print, but as a business proposition, an ebook is just such a better business proposition for the writer. So in terms of income and in terms of reader reach, digital sales online are the way to go. So it's fantastic that we're dominating that, because it's the future, and B, you get much more return on each book, and so enjoy that rather than trying to break into an area that's very, very difficult, unless of course that's your goal, in which case off you go. And
if you have a colouring book, for example.
This would be fun. Yeah, send Dad out to do the marketing.
Okay. On book covers, when you see quotes, perfect for fans of name the movie here, or perfect for fans of name of the author, do you have to have permission to use the name of the author or a movie on your cover, or can anyone do it?
Well, anyone can do it, and anyone does do it. This is a personal question, personal, I wouldn't call it ethics exactly, but your personal sort of sense of what you are willing or not willing to do, or feel is okay to do or not. I mean, people are doing this all over the place, and anecdotally, it does offer you a marketing advantage. Now, I have heard, it's something stirring in the back of my brain here, that there is a certain frowning on this among some of the services. But and did you hear, Joanna? Did you hear anything?
No, and to be fair, I haven't really seen people put it on their covers unless they're traditionally published covers where presumably they have legal coverage. But I've seen people put it on their Amazon descriptions.
Yeah.
And I think there's smart ways of doing this. Nick Stevenson does, and it's been on my list for ages. He has a Q&A with the author within his Amazon description, and in that Q&A, it's like the description, because of course you get 4,000 characters, right? So in the description, you put your blurb, which is generally for all of us pretty short, and then you include a Q&A with the author, which might say, so Orna, who are your favorite authors and who are the influences on your writing? And then you can basically add a couple of author names and that will in some way get into the metadata. Now, you're not allowed to use author names in keywords in your book title or in your keyword fields on Amazon, but this interview with the author Q&A thing seems like a way around that. I would never put another author's name on my cover unless they gave me a quote, basically.
Yeah. I think that personally, I wouldn't go there on this at all. I think this is just a personal opinion. I just think it's bad manners and not very nice. Would you like it to be done to you? And particularly if, supposing you're taking an author's name, they don't actually, want to be on your book. They don't, for whatever set of reasons. So, I personally, it's not something I would do.
However, fair game to talk about it, because
absolutely,
when people say, what is your book like, you need a more famous name to hang your book on. So when, I say Dan Brown meets Lara Croft, this is a big name author plus a movie. People know what that means. So I can't say, oh, it's like my JF Penn books, People don't know what the hell that means. So I think what we're saying is, what I'm saying, I verbally say this. I've also written on my website, Dan Brown meets Lara Croft, Stephen King meets P.D. James, that type of thing. But I wouldn't put it on a book cover.
Yep, fair enough.
Good. T says, I would like to know the best way to promote my books to the Indian market. I have a large percentage of Indian likes on my Facebook page and really believe my brand of paranormal romance would appeal. I've uploaded to Smashwords because that filters to Kobo. Does that mean I'll reach the Indian market as Amazon does? Big news on India. We've this week actually, Amazon announced that the biggest growth in the sales of Kindle devices is India and China. And Amazon also bought, I think it was like I can't remember the percentage, a large percentage of a Indian publisher, and have also been expanding the Amazon.in platform. So finally, it looks like we're getting a cab off the rank for India. And of course, Flipkart shuttered their doors on their ebook specific sales, and Kobo took over those. So I totally agree with you that Amazon and Kobo are probably the two that are the most interesting. Google Books would be if they were actually doing anything.
Will be, I think, in time. Yeah,
but potentially because of the cheaper phones. Oh, that's the other thing. Google have rolled out their internet in Mumbai, and I've seen some other things about the rolling out of internet. Also, the cheapest smartphone ever has just been released in India as well. All these things make the rise of digital far more likely in India. So I am also personally very interested, and this book, Destroyer of Worlds, is set in India for a very good reason. So
never miss a trick.
Never miss a trick. I love India also, and one of my stated goals is to speak at the Jaipur Literary Festival at some point, just so everyone knows I'm up for an invite to that. And then I would like to be paid to go, not just turn up. So tips for promoting books to Indian market. So basically it's very similar to other social media. We've been doing some Facebook advertising in the last month, and actually if you just go to their audience insights and look at the biggest audience for Facebook globally, it's a couple of cities in India and some in the Philippines. It's not America, it's not Britain.
Wow, how interesting.
It is India, the Philippines, so this is fascinating. So Facebook advertising is just as valid in India. Probably the biggest thing for people to do is go check your prices. So make sure your price in Indian rupees is affordable. Now, hopefully CreateSpace, I've heard, this is a rumor that they that they will be opening up a CreateSpace in India, because at the moment our print books in India are priced too high for the market. So we need to have a print on demand service in India that can do that. There are some available, but at the moment, if you're on CreateSpace, you know, as I am, it would be nice for them to have a local printer. So I believe that will come, but you need to change your price of your ebooks. Just go to amazon.in and have a look at what the top selling ebooks are priced, and you'll probably find it's a lot less than what you're pricing at because of the automatic price change. So I think, you know, pretty much it's doing a similar thing. There's the rise in podcasts in India, there's social networking. We're all not so different from each other.
Yes, you find that point of connection, but I suppose the point is that you do have to treat it as a different market, and you do have to be aware that it does operate slightly differently. We did a session, how to self-publish in India, during the week with, or a week ago, I'm sorry, time is just going, with Ritesh Kala, who works in a small publishing organization there, and Mukti, who does the editorial, and Rasana, who is doing, you know, very well in India and is really great in terms, she's our Indian ambassador and really fabulous help to other indies working in that space. So you can check out, actually our tech let us down a little bit, so it's not brilliant in parts, but do have a check out. It's just, you find it under how to self-publish in India if you Google it, and have a listen to that, because particularly Rasana talks about the challenges of promoting. But I would say to you, you're ahead of the game, in the sense that I think it's only 1% of India books in India are ebooks at this point, and Amazon's absolutely determined to crack that nut, you know, and they will make things possible. And then you've got Kobo on the other side, which is a great combination, I think. So in the next year, I think we're really going to see some inroads here. And so everybody listening here, come on, let's think India, let's all be there when this starts, you know. And this is the thing about these overseas territories, these big ones like India and China. You know, we can be there now in the way that some of the US indies were there at the beginning. And we're doing this series now of on Sundays of successful indies, you know, kind of how I did it. And it's striking to see how many people in the US who are still doing very well are part of that first wave that got their start when it was much easier to be noticed, when discoverability wasn't so difficult. And so, you know, we can all do that in emerging territories. So instead of having the attitude, which I hear a lot of indies saying, oh, there's no point in me marketing in India because it's only 1% of people buying ebooks, that's actually a great time to get in.
And also, let's remember that there are more English speakers, educated English speakers with money in India than there is of the population of the whole US. So there's over 200 million educated English-speaking Indians in India.
Amazing. And super literate society. They value books, so value education. Yeah,
exactly. I think the problem, with people who haven't necessarily traveled too much, is that the media view of some of the countries we're talking about, some of the supposedly developing countries, are now some of the strongest growing economies in the world. Like, I put Nigeria in the same bracket. And I was just on a podcast for the #1 podcast in Ghana, which is awesome. So this is the thing. I think we need to stop assuming that, you know, we've reached some kind of pinnacle, because we haven't. We are still at the beginning. Minute one, day one for India, for Nigeria, for the other 200 countries in the world. So anyway, that's what I'm excited about. You know, I always harp on about this, but it's something that I believe is crazy. We've barely even started.
Absolutely. Hear, hear.
Yes, hear, hear. We're always roaring people up on our show, aren't we? Gail says, I'm still quite confused with the ebook side of publishing. We understand, Gail. It's tough when you first get started. I would like to release my children's book digitally, but the format I require is a fixed pub layout. Ingram's talk about having this format available, blah, blah, blah. there's quite a long question. I'm also wondering, when someone publishes an ebook, how do you control the number of duplicate copies they make to use on other devices? I'll just answer that ebook duplicate thing, and then you can come back on the children's book and Ingram. So when somebody buys, in quotation marks, an ebook, they're basically buying the right to read the ebook on whatever device they want to. Those of us who care about such things do not publish with DRM, which locks people into a specific device. So I publish without DRM as far as possible on any platform, which means people can read it on their Kindle, read it on their Nook, read it on their Kobo, read it on their phone, read it on their computer. They can do whatever they want with it. So it's not a duplicate copy as such. That person can read it on whatever device they want. I think if you're getting worried about piracy, which is the person who buys it then uploading it to a pirate site, I think that's probably quite unlikely. If they're going to pirate, they're going to do it, they're going to get it from a pirate site. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So Orna, do you want to answer Gail on the children's book fixed pub layout with Ingrams?
It's quite a technical question. I would say that the technology for complex children's and illustrated books generally, we're not quite there yet on ebooks. I'm not sure when you talk about Ingram if you're talking about Spark and you're talking about the ebook end of it, or whether you're talking about the print book end of it. That's quite a technical question, and what I'd like to do with that is refer it to Andy Bromley, who will help you, who is at Ingram UK and who is very generous in terms of helping out our members with specific queries about Ingram. So let me put you in touch with Andy on that specific. On the piracy question, if I could just come back on that, because it just comes up so often. It surprised me for ages, and I really have come to think that this piracy question is a form of fear, which is not actually about piracy in a way. It's a fear that's felt by a lot of beginner authors who are either contemplating publishing and putting their book out there, or have just put their first or second book out. And I think it's actually the fear of just putting the thing out there focuses in on piracy, because piracy is actually quite irrelevant to us. It's not something to think about at all. It's not something you can control, and it's not really that important. And there are people who actually welcome being pirated because it's a way of getting your free book out there to lots and lots of people. And people who buy on pirate sites don't tend to pay money for books anyway, so they never would have bought it in the first place. And there are countless reasons why it's not something to spend a lot of time thinking about, but it is something that new authors seem to spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about. It reminds me very much of people I knew in the old days when trade publishing was the only way to go, who used to say, I don't want to send my submission in because I'm afraid they'll copy my idea, and basically they'll go take my great idea and publish it, and I'll be cut out of the loop. And again, I think it's actually a psychological fear of putting a book out there. So just go ahead. Don't worry about piracy. Don't worry about how many people lend your book and don't pay for it or whatever. Everybody reading your book is a good thing. For most authors, the challenge is, getting people to read the book at all. That's your first challenge. So piracy is something to just forget about.
Good. Vernie says, I know authors who publish through CreateSpace garner larger royalties from the CreateSpace e-store, but what's in it for readers to buy there? As someone who has literally just approved my colouring books on CreateSpace, I can tell you, I don't know if anyone shops on the CreateSpace e-store.
Authors.
Yeah, maybe
buy their own books.
Although I buy my own books on Amazon once they're live, so I can get ranking for it, and free shipping with Amazon Prime. Although they've just changed the rules on that in the US, which is a bit of a bummer. So Vernie, I would say I don't think you even need to worry about it. You don't use CreateSpace for the benefit of the CreateSpace e-store. You just use it because people buy on Amazon. Next question, final question, which is good because we're coming up to the hour. Mark says, I have a series which satirizes Doctor Who. My cover designer and I are concerned about potential legal action from the BBC. What are the rules on cover design, or is there an ALLi expert you could point us towards?
our legal expert would be Helen Sedgwick, but I can tell you, you are in dangerous territory. So you do need to think about it. And it being the UK, you would probably, if you're serious about, you know, needing to go ahead in that sort of way, you do need to think about it. Now, that's the sort of official line. On the other side, you know, what would need to happen is the BBC would need to sue you. And people generally make a libel claim against people that they can have a chance of getting some money out of. And the average indie author doesn't really fall into that category. So the chances of the BBC actually suing you are slim. But there are copyright issues at stake that, as authors and creators, we all need to take on board. So what I would say is there's nothing wrong with satirizing in and of itself. You just need to make it clear what, you know, what you've done, and you're not trying to pass off, and you're not trying to you know, ride the back of something unfairly. So again, if you wanted to submit the actual specifics of the question, we could look at it more closely, because it does get quite technical in terms of how you present it and the words you use, and you know, what's good and what's bad. And then our advice would be quite general. If you really wanted to cover yourself, you probably would need an intellectual property lawyer based here in the UK who would know exactly what you can and can't do.
Yeah, there is actually, if you Google Doctor Who parodies, there's a whole load of stuff that are listed there in terms of print media, as well as all kinds of other things. I mean, the difficulty with satire is, I think the actual content of the book is different to the cover, because if you're asking about cover design, it seems to assume that you're going to use something that is obviously a Doctor Who thing, like a TARDIS, whereas you can't, I would say that like, you couldn't possibly use the Doctor Who font or the Doctor Who, you know, but I presume you could have two characters standing in front of something rectangular in a pose that might resemble a doctor. I mean, or someone with a long scarf or something. You know, I think satire is so difficult, isn't it? But I would definitely. I mean, Helen is an American lawyer, isn't she? But she would still have a view on that.
Definitely can help in the general, and we can generally help you on the general sort of questions. And I also think, you know, putting a disclaimer inside, making it clear what you've done, you know, being upfront about it, not trying to there are lots of little things you can do to kind of help your case. And I mean, people are doing it all the time.
So it's fan fiction, you know, really, it's fan fiction, isn't it?
Exactly. And some authors would actually love, you know, and do welcome people writing in their world and all of that. But you know, when it's a corporation and it's the BBC and it's such a well-known property and all of that, you do need to be careful. So as Joanna says, it all comes down to those little details. Some things will be more likely to be on the right side of the fence than not. Some things will be grey areas, and then some things will be no-nos.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting the last couple of weeks. One big, Sherilyn Kenyon, I think it was, sued Cassandra Clare. I think those are the two authors. Again, hearsay, remembering this. I'm going to have to Google it now. Cassandra Clare is I'm going to have to find it, because it's a really interesting example of something that just seems crazy in this situation. So Sherilyn Kenyon sues Cassandra Clare for willfully copying her novels, the best-selling fantasy author of the Dark Hunter books, seeking damages for the Shadowhunter series. And this is fascinating to me, because the point that Sherilyn Kenyon seems to make is essentially about both employ a line of warriors who protect the normal world from demons, and they must kill their demonic father, and they have enchanted swords. Now, seriously? That sounds like pretty much every fantasy.
Are they not all requirements for the genre?
That's the thing. This was only filed 5th of February, so there's no answer on it yet. But I think this is a really interesting case, because these are genre tropes that we're talking about. But the fact is, I think Cassandra Clare has had, you know, the movie deals and everything around that, the Mortal Instruments series, but you know, there's some really interesting legal cases going on around this type of thing. Now, this is not satire, this is a claim of plagiarism, basically. So really interesting, because of course we know that copyright is not in the idea, is it? It's in the expression of the idea.
Absolutely. And yeah, on first hearing, I love that case, but sound like there's a lot to go on there. But it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe we'll talk about that next time. So Orna, we're coming to the end of the month. Anything that's happening for you in the next month, or that ALLi is doing, that you want to tell people about?
Yeah, I'm launching a series. I'm doing a kind of a mad thing this year where I'm trying to try this before, and it didn't go so well, but back here again, and launching a series of the Go Creative books, essentially. So first one comes on 3rd of March, and then once a month thereafter until the first 8 or so are out there. So which would be just great, because they've been hanging around forever. So I'm excited about that. So finally finding their way into the world, but a whole readjustment of everything needed to kind of shape everything around it. So exciting times.
That's good. I will be sorting out Destroyer of Worlds. That will be into final proofreading by the next show, and also putting the colouring book out. And I'm starting on a book on author mindset, which I've been talking about for years, and is now next on my list, on my master list, on my board. It is now next after Destroyer of Worlds. So
wow. I really look forward to that. Yeah, that's great.
that's a big deal. I'm also, sorry?
So needed. So needed. Well, yeah. No, it is. It's great, because I think that is what we're seeing again and again. The key to success is getting the mindset right. Once the mindset's right, then it's just persistence. It's just staying with it. But if the mindset's working against you, it's like you can't get going.
Right? Well, no pressure there then.
We're all waiting.
Yeah, okay, I'll get on with that. And also I should say that I am speaking in Austin, Texas at the Smarter Artists Summit, which I'm super excited about, which is being run by the boys from the Self-Publishing podcast, Johnny, Sean and Dave, and I'll be meeting them for the first time, as you have done, meeting people you've known online for years in person, which is going to be fun.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. People can find that at smarterartistsummit.com if they're interested. Okay, so we'll be back
for a summit. Yeah, I look forward to it. Will that be online as well?
Doubtful. It's author entrepreneurial stuff. It's really going to be quite hardcore. So looking forward to that. So we'll be back next month, and happy writing, everybody, and happy creating.
Happy publishing.
Yes, happy publishing. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.